I'd also spent half a decade off the back end of like family court stuff with my previous marriage.
Yeah.
And there was just a lot of emotional and physical and just stress.
Yeah.
And I ended up having a massive like nervous breakdown. And that was in,
I remember, I think I was,
it was about April of 2019.
yeah.
It was April of 2019. And it kind of just started like with heart palpitations to
Yeah.
like, nausea, vomiting, ringing in the ears, anxiety, to not sleeping
That's
one night, then
insane.
not sleeping another night. And then a week later, I've slept 3 hours. And,
Yeah.
sleep deprivation is one of the greatest forms of torture. I don't recommend you trying it. And it just kind of compounded from there. And to the point where I started getting like, extremely like anxious, suicidal thoughts. I ended up getting to the point where, like I was like openly talking to my wife, like, oh, I'm fucking done. I want to kill myself.
Wow.
And, I didn't try it, but like I insinuated a few times because I was so desperate for kind of, for this pain that I was going through at the time to stop. And, at the time it was a breakdown. In reflection, it was a breakthrough.
Always is.
I just didn't know, like my body was trying to process a lifetime of trauma, energy, everything else in between. And it kind of ended up leading me to where I spent, like I ended up getting medicated, like so I was on antipsychotics and antidepressant medications because they're like, look, you're a threat to yourself. They wanted to put me in like a loony bin.
Wow.
Yeah, like it was full. One thing you probably know about me, if I do something, I 10x it, right? I go all in on it. Right?
You're very much
so I did depression and anxiety like really well. I was like a poster child for that. And I think throughout that period, sleeping 90 minutes a night consistently for months on end, medicated, I ended up finding a like executive burnout retreat in the like a hinterlands of the Sunshine Coast.
Wow.
And it was there that I finally started to like, it was like a 10 to 12 hour per day reprogramming where you literally are learning about these emotions, like back then it was funny. I was the guy that depression, you're just weak.
Isn't that
anxious,
funny?
you're a little bitch. Like I had no empathy, no compassion because I was programmed and brought up where to show like old school British culture, like emotions and feelings are weak. And, then the universe like, okay, sure. Now
Let's
you can
give you the
experience
train.
it.
Yeah.
Now you can experience it. And, I ended up going to this retreat where we started to learn about all these things. And every day you would spend 6 hours on, an hour with a psychologist, an hour with a hypnotherapist, an hour with a doctor, an hour with a trainer, an hour with a nutritionist, an hour with a yoga teacher, an hour with a shaman. And you would literally spend hours every day reprogramming yourself across all these different modalities. And day by day, week by week, I started to get better. And it was there that I actually found meditation. And so meditation was what like truly transformed my life. And it was actually the works of a guy by the name of Dr. Joe Dispenza.
Yay. We love him.
Yeah, and I remember being there, and one of the teachers, she did some inner work on me, and like went through some regressive stuff, some hypnotherapy stuff, and she went down quite deep. And I distinctly remember she jumping out of her seat, and she was like, "Whoa!" And I'm like, "What's wrong?" And she's like, she's like, it's going to sound weird to you, but it's like as we were regressing, there was like some blackness inside you that just, she's like,
was she like holding, like feeling that?
Yeah. And she's like, this is like, outside the scope of my skill set, like, and she's like, she's like, I feel strongly you need to go and like look into Joe Dispenza's work and frequency and energy centers and all that type of stuff. And I was like, look, I'll try anything. You tell me if you want me to go in a cave and fucking sing songs and chant.
Were you a bit skeptical, like fucking hell?
Well, I was, and so that's the thing. Like coming from my background, like looking at things from a science perspective or a coaching perspective, all that was like just voodoo shit, and so going through that experience at first, I was very resistant to it because I at that point in my life, I still gave an F about what people thought about me.
Yeah.
Now I'm at a point in my life where I honestly don't care. And I think liberating myself of that and letting go of all that has allowed me to step into the person that I'm in today. And, you know,
It's beautiful.
it was that Joe Dispenza anyway. And I remember reading the book and I'm like, this just resonates with me. Yeah. And because the way, you know, he obviously broke it down in a way that, you know, was pretty straightforward. It had the science behind it. I'm like, okay, I can feel into this. I'm going to give this a go.
Yeah.
And I remember I'm like, I really need to go see this person, this guy in person.
You saw him in person.
Yeah. But at the time I couldn't, like his seminars were booked out.
Yeah.
And the next one was in like Mexico at the end of the year. I'm like, oh, look, I'll put my name on the waiting list. And 2 months later, by that time I'd come back home. So I'd finished that period of 3 months away from my family. I was finally sleeping more. I was still on the medication, which were like soul crushing and mind numbing. But at that point in my life were a necessity for me, right? Like they were a Band-Aid. They were never going to fix the root cause of the problem, but they were the Band-Aid. And about a week out from when this event was meant to be on, I get an email from their team saying we have a spot.
Wow.
And so I'm like, booked it, jumped on a plane to Playa del Carmen in Mexico, and ended up spending a week over there with Joe, and
it's amazing.
It transformed my life.
Yeah.